It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccerphiles Canada. Welcome to Series 31, looking at the players of the 2025 African Cup. This episode is looking at the players of Benin. Part 1, the candidates. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin and this is Series 31 on the players of the 2025 African Cup. This episode covers Benin's players. This is the first time we have looked at Benin. Just a note on where we're at in our media casts. We are publishing previews of the groups and teams of the 2025 African Cup at the same time as this series on the players. Last summer, we previewed groups, teams, and players for the 2025 CONCACAF Gold Cup, and we also did a media cast introducing ourselves. After this African Cup, we will tackle the massive 48-team World Cup in the summer of 2026. So we plan to start publishing episodes for that in the springtime of 2026. We're doing this media cast on the players in two parts. Part 1 here is a look at the candidates for the squad and their likelihood of making it. We examine the participation of the players in games over the recent period, as well as a couple of other factors, and we categorize players into definite, likely, or possible, or else possible but unlikely, or seemingly off the squad. And we'll go into more details on the career information of the players we think likely to reach the final squad, and less, perhaps even just the names of players unlikely to get there. So part 2 is going to come out when the squads are released and the final squad is selected. That'll probably be in mid-December. At that time, we'll go back over the list that we create here today and see who made it and who didn't. And we'll also cover things like injuries and surprise selections. So this episode has 3 sections. In section 1, we give some general information on the team. Let me get my graphics in order here. General information on team. Section 2, well, that's the main part of our business here. We cover the main candidates in each position, tell you how likely we think they are to make the squad and why, and also give a little career information on the main players. And section 3 is really just summaries. We're going to summarize and conclude with a review of section 2 and a couple of other orders of business like injuries. There. Okay, that is it. Let's move on to section 1, some information on the team. And we're going to begin here with club affiliations. These are actually more interesting when done in comparison to other teams. So if you compare these with, say, Senegal and Congo DR in this group, kind of gives you a sense of how strong the squad is in terms of their club affiliation. These are pretty rough estimates, but for domestic clubs, we have about 5% of the players. Not that many. Buffles is probably the biggest club in Benin, and we have a player with Coton FC as well. We also have kind of what I call the local African leagues, not really big leagues, but outside of Benin anyway. So we have players playing for teams in Nigeria and Ivory Coast. That makes up about 5% too. And then slightly larger leagues in Africa, also 5%. We have players playing in South Africa, Morocco, and Egypt. Next, we move on to small clubs in Europe mostly. That makes up about 40% of the players. So we have players with teams in Finland, Azerbaijan, and Slovenia, for example. Mid-sized clubs in Europe, also about 40%. These would be bigger leagues like France, Germany, and Turkey. And then we look at the top or elite clubs, and no players really playing for elite clubs. So let's look at the kind of the topmost clubs that Benin players are with. And we have Lorient in France, Grasshopper in Switzerland, and FCSB in Romania. That's the new name for Steaua Bucharest there. So let's review then 5% with domestic leagues, 5% local African leagues, 5% larger African leagues, and then small clubs in Europe, 40%, mid-sized clubs, 40%. And, that adds up to 95% to show that we're not being rigorous in our numbers here, just giving a kind of sense of things. Okay, let's go on to recent games over the recent period. Well, Benin is one of the few teams that did not play in the 2023 African Cup there. And so that will not be our starting point as it is for most teams when we come to the narrative. But even for other teams, that's not included in the count anyway. So the count is comparable because we begin in March of 2024 for all teams in terms of the participation count. So we have two friendlies in March 2024 for Benin. Oh, and I wanted to say right from the start, actually, that they have the same manager throughout this whole period. So we don't have to kind of consider changes under a new manager. Okay, so two in March 2024, two in June of 2024. Those are World Cup qualifying games. And then we have 6 games in September to November 2024. All of those qualification games for the African Cup in 2025. So all the qualifications were done in that short period. And of course, Benin made it. That's why we're talking about them here. Moving into 2025, we have 2 World Cup qualification games in March. Friendly, there was no tournament duty. So, sorry, I said friendly instead of June. Goodness knows why. June 2025, most teams played at friendly games. Most played 2 games, actually. Benin, though, just 1 friendly there in June of 2025. And then back to business in September and October with the last 2 games of World Cup 2026 qualifying. So 2 games in September, 2 games in October. Those are the games we're looking at for lineups. And there we have it. Yes, okay, that's it. Let's talk about formations during those periods. And we'll just summarize it here. We're not going into any great detail. The most common formation that Benin used was a 4-2-3-1 formation. So that would be a good kind of image to keep in your head. Or actually, probably a better image to keep in your head is a 4-3-3 formation. And when we get to the midfield, you'll understand why. They did use 4-2-3-1 in 53% of games and a 4-3-3 in 29% of games. The other 18% was 2 different formations there. Again, we won't get into the weeds too much here. Rather, we'll just give you a couple of thoughts here about what to look out for. So over the course of their 17 games, they used a 2-man central defense in 100% of cases. So they never did use a 3-man central defense. So we're always looking at 2 central defenders, a right back and a left back. The midfield we'll talk about when we get there. But for the forwards, we have just a single forward in 94% of games. Only one time, that was actually the first game in March of 2024, did they use a 2-man forward line. Yeah, there we go. And I should say, actually, the 4-3-3 formation, we consider a single forward alongside a left and right attacking midfielder. And again, we'll talk about that when we get to the left attacking midfielder position. Let's move on to our last order of business in section 1 here, and that is upcoming games. Well, we prepared this media cast for games up until the end of October, and since there have been games played in November, so just one friendly for Benin here on November 18th. It was in Morocco, and it was against Burkina Faso. They won. They lost that game 3-0 to Burkina Faso there. We're not really interested in the result, but we are interested in the lineups. However, we're going to save that for part 2 of this media cast in hopes that it'll help us to predict the starters, which is one of the main focuses in part 2. But here we are only going up to the end of October and kind of looking at the candidates and their likelihood, which brings us into section 2 here, where we look at the candidates. We're going to begin with the manager, and what we're going to do here is begin by just naming the names and then giving the story of what has happened in that position over the period. And then we'll take a closer look at some of the major players there. So for managers, we begin with the current manager, that is Gernot Rohr. And we'll put a couple of other names on the list here, kind of the previous managers, Michel Dusoye and Moussa Latunji. So let's go to the narrative and make sense of these names here. Gernot Rohr became manager of Benin in February of 2023. The previous manager, Michel Dusoye, had in 2019 brought them to their first African Cup since 2010. However, he had failed to qualify them in 2021. They actually had a good qualification run for the 2022 World Cup, finishing second in the group and just a point behind Congo DR. But Dusoye was let go after that campaign. He was replaced by caretaker manager Moussa Latunji, who, despite being a caretaker manager, was in the position for almost a year. And Latunji began qualification for the 2023 African Cup with them, but he did lose the first 2 games, and the second game was a home loss to Mozambique. The first game, a loss in Senegal, was to be expected, but the loss to Mozambique a bit disappointing. Gernot Rohr came in after that and improved their record, but they did fall well short of qualifying for the previous African Cup there. So that made 2 in a row. However, Gernot Rohr did lead them through a successful campaign for this African Cup, the 2025 edition, and also a competitive World Cup 2026 campaign just finished there a couple of months ago in October, where they finished 3rd in the group, but they were just 1 point behind first place finisher South Africa and actually tied with second place Nigeria. So a very competitive campaign there. So Gernot Rohr, despite Gernot Rohr getting them to competitions, there's no despite about it. He's doing well. Let's take a look at him. He's a German-born manager, and he was a player, played for Bordeaux in France for 12 years. That was the club he was with most of all. He actually started off with Bayern Munich, so a good club career there, although I don't think he was... I have no notes of him being on the national team there for Germany. As a manager, he's been specializing kind of in Africa. He started actually as the manager of Bordeaux in France 3 separate times, actually, and manager of French and Swiss teams. Then he moved to Tunisia in 2008, 2009. That was his first African team, and from 2010 started coaching just national teams. So he took Gabon in 2012 to the African Cup, and then Niger in 2013. He was manager of Burkina Faso in 2015. Didn't go to a tournament with them, but was with Nigeria and took them through the World Cup in 2018 and the 2019 African Cup there. And now he is manager of Benin since 2023. So taking them to this cup as well. So a pretty successful manager, Gernot Rohr. And we won't go into any detail on Michel Doucet, except to say that he hasn't managed the team ever since leaving Benin in 2021. Okay, that is the managerial situation. Let's move on to goalkeepers and begin by introducing the candidates. And I'm going to talk about the colors that we're using because they're all represented here. Let me introduce the players first, though. At the definite level, we have Martin Tangenu. And at the likely level, we have Saturnin Alagbi. And we have Serge Obasi. So I'll talk about the colors the players' names are in. If you're looking at YouTube, the black script, which Saturnine Alagbi is in, indicates that they have been through a tournament. The light grey script means they've been on the team for a while but have not been through a tournament. And this is new. The orange script indicates a player who joined the team during this period. Having said that, I realize that is not true of Danjanu, so he should be in light grey here. But anyway, that is what the colors mean. And let's take a look at the position over the period. So Saturnine Alagbi had been the starting keeper up until the first game of this period. In fact, he had started all but one of the games for Benin since November 2020. And he did start the first game in March of 2024 here, but he was on the bench for all games thereafter. So taking over the starting position was Marcel Danjanu, and he started all of the games after March of 2024. Looking at the backup situation, Serge Obasi seems to be the third string keeper. He was on the bench for all but 6 games, actually, but between June and October 2024, he wasn't called up. It seems like they tried out 2 new keepers there, and then basically they didn't work out or what have you. They were gone, and Serge Obasi or Obasa was back on the bench for all of 2025. Okay, let's look at the candidates then. We have Marcel Danjanu. Been with Benin since 2022 and has 19 caps. He's 22 years old and he plays for Kruger United, a bit of a smaller club there in South Africa, since 2025. In fact, that might be a bit of a step down from JDR Stars, also in South Africa, where he was for 5 years before that. Nevertheless, he has become a bigger name on Benin. Become the starting keeper. He started 16 of the 17 games over this period and was on the bench for the first match there. Our likely candidate, Saturnine Alagbi, has been with Benin since 2011, and he has 46 caps and is 32 years old. He was actually born in Mauritania, but he plays for clubs. His current club is Choré in France since 2025. That's not actually a name I'm familiar with, so must be a pretty small club. He also played in Bulgaria, but mostly for clubs in France. He did play for a club in Benin at the beginning of his career too. He was part of the 2019 African Cup, actually came in as the backup keeper there, but gained the starting position from game 3. And 3, 4, and 5, because they reached the quarterfinals in that game. And as we saw in the narrative, he started the first of their games, or he was the keeper all the way up until March 2024, and then was on the bench for the 16 matches after that. The other player, Sergio Bassi, well, we looked at already. He was off the team for 6 matches from June to October 2024, but otherwise was on the bench all the time. And Sergio Bassi has been with Benin since 2022 with 2 caps, and he is 29 years old. He plays for Remo Stars in Nigeria and was with clubs in Benin before that. Okay, we move on to defence, and we begin with central defenders here. Let's take a look at the candidates. We have, as a definite candidate, Mohamed Tijani, and then 3 likely candidates. The first one is Cedric Huntonji. The second one, Johan Roche. And the third, Olivier Verdon. And then we have 1 candidate seemingly off the squad, and that is Moise Adilahu. And then kind of a veteran, we're just putting him on the list just to recognize that he, just to kind of give recognition, Khalid Adhanom. Okay, we'll come back to look at those players in more detail, but let's look at the situation in central defence. As we said in section 1, it is a 2-man central defence in all games over this period, so they never used a 3-man central defence. And it was Mohamed Tijani and Cedric Huntonji who came into the period as the pairing in central defence. Tijani actually remained in the position throughout the whole period, except for missing the first 2 games there. Not the first 2 games, but the first 2 games of African Cup qualifying in the fall of 2024. Those would be the September games then. And for those 2 games, it was Olivier Verdon who replaced him. In November 2024, Huntonji was out with injury, and although he recovered, he really didn't regain his starting spot until the end of the period here. Replacing him, it wasn't Olivier Verdon, but Johan Roche stepping in for him. And Roche continued as the starter alongside Tijani until June of 2025, and then Verdon took over that starting spot. So it was Verdon partnered with Tijani until the last game. In the last game, Huntonji returned to central defence, and Verdon played as a central midfielder there. All right, that's the story. Let's look at the candidates. So Mohamed Tijani, been with Benin since 2022 with 22 caps and 1 goal. And he plays for Iverdon Sports in Switzerland since 2024 and was with Victoria Pilsen in Czech Republic for a couple of years prior to that. Tijani was born in the Ivory Coast. Yes, you can see by his name being in light grey that he doesn't have tournament experience. He started 15 of their 17 games over the period, as we saw in the narrative there, not selected for the 2 matches in September 2024. Next, we have Cedric Huntonji, and he has been with Benin since 2017. He has 33 caps and 2 goals and is 31 years old. And he plays for Bandırmaspor in Turkey since 2025. That's a recent move. He was with Angers in France for 3 years before that. Actually has a pretty interesting resume there. He played in Bulgaria and in the USA during his career. Huntonji was born in France and was actually might have made the 2019 African Cup, but he wasn't selected for that tournament. But he was kind of in and around the team at that time. Over the recent period, Huntonji has started 8 of their 17 games, and that includes the first 7 of their matches and the last one. He was out with 2 separate injuries for 4 games and on the bench for 4 games. The second likely candidate of three is Johan Roche. He's been with Benin since 2020 with 22 caps and one goal, and is 28 years old. He plays for a team in Romania and played in France before that. He too was born in France. And Roche started 11 of their 17 games over the period. We're going to see he started as a right back several times. Started 11 and was on the bench for 5 games. That's the first 5 games, and was not selected for one match. But that was the last match, which causes us a bit of concern. That's why we moved him down to likely rather than definite. The third likely candidate, Olivier Verdon, has been with Benin since 2017 with 44 caps and no goals. So he's the most experienced here. He's 30 years old. And he plays for Ludogorets Razgrad in Bulgaria since 2021. He was born in France. A lot of his earlier teams were in France. And he was one of the few players on the squad who was part of the African Cup squad in 2019. He started all 5 games there. Part of the tournament. So that's why his name is in black script. He actually had returned after a year-long absence in September 2024 and started 8 of their remaining 13 games. He was subbed in for 1 and not selected for 4. So Olivier Verdon, a likely candidate. At the possible but unlikely level, we have Moise Adilahu. He's a French-born player. We won't go into too much detail because he didn't start any games and was not selected for the last 5 matches. So we'll give information on him and kind of players at that level. We'll give more information if they actually are selected for the final squad, and we'll do that in part 2. And then showing our respects for a veteran here, Khalid Adhanom has been or was with Benin from 2006 up until 2023 with 85 caps and 2 goals. And he was not only part of the 2019 African Cup, but also part of the 2008 and 2010 editions as well. So kind of famous player there in Benin, but 2023 his last game. Let's move on to left backs, and we only have we have 2 candidates here. We have David Kiki as a definite candidate, and then we have Gabriel Mulero as a seemingly off the squad player. As a possible but unlikely player. He's a newcomer to the team, but didn't really make it there. Let's look at the position. David Kiki had been the starter in the position since October of 2021. He missed only 2 games up until March 2024, and he actually did play the first 5 games of the period. But in the fall of 2024, he got injured. He was replaced by right winger Jodel Dosu for the first 2 games, and then by central defender Johan Roche and right back Tamimu Uaru for the second. Kiki returned for 2 starts after that, but he was benched in favour of Uaru for the second game of March 2025. And then central defender Johan Roche started the next 4 games after that. Kiki returning just for the last game in October of 2025. So we see that as a bit of a theme through Benin here, that things were fairly stable up until October or up until the fall of 2025, where some changes seem to come about. But anyway, David Kiki, the main candidate there. Otherwise, Gabriel Mulero didn't get any starts. Oh, we got to introduce the candidates here. Anyway, I'll finish that thought. Mulero didn't get any starts. Rather, it was out of position players coming in to fill in when Kiki was not there. David Kiki has been with Benin since 2015. He has 55 caps and no goals and is 32 years old. And he currently plays for FCSB in Romania, and maybe that team is better known as the old Steaua Bucharest. He was with another team in Romania before that, and a couple of clubs in Bulgaria as well. And he is one of the players who was on the squad for the African Cup in 2019, but he only appeared in one game there, even though he did start and finish it. Over the recent period, Kiki started 8 of their 17 games. He subbed in for 1 and was on the bench for 5. Injured for 2 matches, and then just 1 match that he was not selected for. So we have David Kiki as a definite candidate. Gabriel Molero is at the possible but unlikely level, and he got his only appearance on the bench in June of 2025. So really, they don't have a backup for this position, it looks like. Some of the goalkeepers there, where they just kind of got a tryout and were quickly dismissed from the squad. Anyway, he is only 19 years old, Molero, so he may come up in the future. Let's move over to the right back position. We get a couple of names that we just looked at, or we just came up filling in on the left. We have no definite candidate over here, but we have Abdul Rashid Mumini as our first likely candidate. And then another likely candidate, the one we just mentioned, Tamimu Uoru. Then we have a possible candidate in Rodrigue Fasinu, and a possible but unlikely candidate in newcomer Brandon Agunon. And one player seemingly off the squad, Yusuf Asogba. Okay, that's a lot of candidates for one position. Let's take a look at the narrative of this position. Abdul Rashid Mumini held the position for most of the period. However, he did miss 4 games in the second half of the period, and in every case, he was replaced by Tamimu Uaru there. And that includes the last 2 games, so it may mean that Mumini's starting position is under challenge from Uaru. Okay, so Abdul Rashid Mumini is with Benin since 2023, but has 21 caps and 1 goal in that time. He's only 21 years old, and he plays for a team in Azerbaijan since 2025 and was with a team in Benin prior to that. He started 12 of the 17 games over the period, subbed in for 1 and not selected for 4 others. But as we noted, that includes the last 2 matches he was not called up for. The other likely candidate, Tamimi Uaru, has been with Benin also since 2023, but he only has 9 caps during that time, and he's 22 years old. He's unattached to a club since July of 2025, but he was with a club in UAE, Hatta, for a couple of years before that, and with a club in Georgia prior to that. Uaru returned after an 11-month absence in November 2024 to start 6 of their remaining 11 games, and he was subbed in for 2 and on the bench for 3 others. So after his return, he was consistently called up, and we also saw him on the left side there too. The possible candidate is Rodrigue Fasinu. He's been with Benin since 2017 with 18 caps and no goals, and is 26 years old. And his clubs have all been in Benin. And he was part of the 2019 African Cup squad also, but just on the bench there. And over this recent period, he hasn't started any games, but he was on the bench for 10 games and not selected for 7 others. So we have Rodrigue Fasinu as a possible candidate here. Our possible unlikely candidate didn't start any of the games. He was subbed in for 1. Sorry, I didn't even say the name. Brandon Agunon, and we're not going to go into detail on him because he was subbed in for 1 on the bench for 3 and not selected for the last 5 matches. So we'll go into more detail if he is selected for the final squad. The player who is seemingly off the squad, Yusuf Asogba, last appeared for the national team in March of 2024. And but he was with a good club. He was with Bordeaux in France until July of 2025, and he's been unattached since then. And he's only 24 years old, so he's kind of an interesting candidate. Youssouf Assogba, I wouldn't be surprised if they do name him to the squad. Anyway, we move on upfield to the defensive end of the midfield, and we're going to treat defensive and central midfielders as a group here. And let's talk about the position. Well, by formation, it's a two-man midfield 59% of the time, and a three-man midfield 41% of the time. But effectively, it's basically a three-man midfield all the time, because even in the 4-2-3-1 formation, it's a central midfielder who plays the role of the central attacking midfield. So we're going to see it's basically three players forming a group here pretty consistently over the whole period. Let's look at the candidates. We have two definite candidates coded as defensive midfielders. The first one is Hassan Imurain, and the second one is Dodo Doku. And then we have at the likely level, newcomer Mariano Ahuangbo. Even though he's likely, he's not a starter. So his name doesn't come up in the narrative. And nor do any of our three possible candidates here. Matteo Alinvi. Matteo Alinvi is the first one. The second is Rodri Kossi. And then the third one is Atijiku Samadou. And then one candidate at the possible but unlikely level, Ghislaine Ahudo. Those are all defensive midfielders. We'll introduce the central midfielders before doing the narrative. And there's only one actually coded as a central midfielder, and that is Ceci Dalmeida. All right, that's our cast of characters. Let's take a look at the narrative here. So Hassan Imurain, Ceci Dalmeida, and Dodo Doku were a three-man central midfield throughout the period. And as I said, that's even true in a 4-2-3-1 formation where Doku plays as the central attacking midfielder when they use that formation. In fact, it's even the case in a 4-4-2 formation. I think they only used that once or twice. But Imurain played as the left winger in that 4-4-2 formation. So the three of them still played together in the midfield. And as a general rule, Imurain did play on the left of the three-man formation. Hassan Imurain played all of the games, all 17 of the games. I think it was 17. Yeah, and Dalmeida missed only one game, and that was the last game where he was replaced, as we saw, by central defender Olivier Verdon. And Doku himself only missed two games, and both times he was replaced by attacking midfielder Junior Oleitan. Actually, we're going to see Junior Oleitan on the left attacking midfield coming up. Interestingly, all three of those absences were in the fall of 2025. So once again, we see that theme of things changing a bit in the September and October 2025 games. Okay, let's go back to the candidates and take a closer look at them, beginning with Hassan Imurain. And interestingly, he was not a starter before this period, but did start all 17 games during the period. So Hassan Imurain has been with Benin since 2023 and has 24 caps and 2 goals. He's only 22 years old and recently moved to Grasshoppers in Switzerland in 2025. Well, he was actually loaned to them in 2024, but from a club in Benin. so playing in Benin. And so that's a pretty big move up to Grasshopper in Switzerland. And he did score one of their goals, actually, one of their 7 goals in qualifying for this tournament, as well as one of their 12 goals in World Cup 2026 qualifying. So despite being a defensive midfielder, looks like he gets a couple of goals. And as we said, started all of the games over the period. So can't get a more definite candidate than that. The other definite candidate is Dodo Doku. He's been with Benin also since 2023 and has 22 caps and 2 goals, very similar record to Imarain, and a very similar age too. He's only 21 years old, and he plays for Leixos in Portugal since 2025 and was with Smuha in Egypt before that for 3 years. So as we said, Doku started 15 of their 17 games over the period. He was subbed in for 1 and not selected for 1. And his 2 goals actually were in World Cup 2026 qualifying there. So these guys contribute up at the top as well. The next candidate is at the likely level. It is Mariano Ahuangbo. And he's been with Benin since 2024 with 3 caps and is 23 years old. So he came in during this period. And he is with NK Olympia in Slovenia and played for a club in Tunisia before that. But he is born in Benin. Got his first cap right at the beginning of this period in March of 2024. Didn't start any of their 17 games, but was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 12. So just 2 matches that he was not selected for. Next, we have the first of our 3 possible candidates, Matteo Alinvi. And he has been with Benin since 2020 with 25 caps. He's 26 years old and he plays for Arsenal Tula in Russia since 2025 and has been with clubs in Sweden, Serbia, and France. He was born in France, Alinvi. Again, like all of these players, he didn't start any of the games, but was subbed in for 6 and on the bench for 8. And that includes the last 6 matches. So just 3 matches that he wasn't called up for. Next, Rodri Kossi. Is with Benin since 2019, just 14 caps for him in that time and no goals. He's 25 years old, so pretty young there, just 19 years old when he was on the African Cup squad. And I'm getting ahead of myself, but he was on the African Cup squad in 2019, just on the bench there. He plays for Hassania Agadir in Morocco and since 2025 was with ES Setif in Algeria before that. So he has been with other clubs in Saudi Arabia and Tunisia. Pretty good resume for someone so young. But he too was born in Benin. His first club was Buffels there. Kossi returned after a 10-month absence in September of 2025 and didn't start any of the remaining 4 games. But he was subbed in for 1 and on the bench for 3. So coming in right at the end, or returning to the squad, I should say, right at the end of the period there. And finally, our 3rd candidate is Atijiku Samadou. And he brand new to the team since 2025 with 5 caps. And he's 21 years old. So we have a lot of young players here. He also played for Smuha in Egypt since 2025 and Al Masri in Egypt before that. He got his first appearance on the bench here in September of 2024 and didn't start any games, but was subbed in for 5 and on the bench for 4. Just 4 matches that he wasn't selected for. So all of these guys possible candidates. Our possible but unlikely candidate is Ghislaine Ahudo. And he just subbed in for 2 matches and was on the bench for 5, but was not selected for any of the last 4 matches there. So, yeah, close to being possible, I would say, but we put in a possible but unlikely. That's Ghislaine Ahudo. Next, we move on to central midfielders. We only had one candidate there. That was at the definite level, and it is Ceci Dalmeida. And he's been with the team since 2015 with 46 caps and 1 goal. He's 30 years old. He's played for a lot of clubs, currently with Neftchi Baku in Azerbaijan since 2025, and seems to switch clubs every couple of years. He's played for a couple of teams in England, Blackpool and Barnsley. He's played for Bordeaux in France. He was born in France, so most of his early clubs were in France there. And Ceci Dalmeida was part of the 2019 African Cup squad and started 3 of the 5 games for them there, and started 16 of the 17 games over this period, as we saw. So just one match he wasn't selected for, but it was the last match. And I know we put another player at we put them down a notch because of that, but we think Ceci Dalmeida is a definite candidate. We would be really surprised if they didn't call him up. That is it for the central midfield, and we have no candidates coded as left and right midfielders, although, as we said, Hassan Imurain probably could be coded as a left midfielder. But anyway, we move on upfield to the attacking end of the midfield, and we begin with left attackers. So this covers a few positions. In a 4-4-2, it could be the attacking left winger, and I think the one time they used that formation, it was Imurain playing there. In the 4-2-3-1, which they use about half of the time, it's a left attacking midfielder, and a 4-3-3, which they also use, it would be a left forward. So that's what we're looking at here, and we have 2 candidates to look at. Both of them are at the definite level. The first one is Junior Olatan. He's actually coded as an attacking midfielder because they don't have anyone coded as a left winger or a left attacking midfielder. The other definite candidate is Andreas Huntonji, and you may recognize that name because we used it in defense. He is the younger brother of Cedric Hutonji. Cedric in central defense there is born in 1994. He's 31 years old. Andreas here is quite a bit younger, 8 years younger. He is 23 years old. So a big difference between the brothers there. And yes, that is the 2 candidates playing over here. Let's look at the narrative for this position. So actually, Julia Olatan didn't play as a left attacking midfielder before 2024, but he exclusively held the position for most of this period, at least up until the fall 2025 games. In September 2025, we did see earlier that he played as a central midfielder. That was for the 2 games in September of 2025, and he didn't start the last 2 games. So for those 4 fall 2025 games, it was the forward Andreas Huntonji playing as the left attacking midfielder at the end of the period there. Let's take a closer look at the candidates then. Junior Olatan, coded as an attacking midfielder, has been with Benin since 2021 with 36 caps and 5 goals, and he's 23 years old, so another young player here. He plays for Göztepe in Turkey since 2025, and with French clubs before that. He and his brother, I have here, so I'm mixing him up with Hutunji. Olatan was born in Benin, but played for French clubs from 2023 onwards. Olatan has started 15 of 17 games over this period. And then at the end, he was subbed in for 1 and injured for 1. The other candidate over here is Andreas Huntonji, and he's got a injury tag, which we'll talk about after we introduce him. Huntonji, Andreas Huntonji, is born, help! He got his first cap since 2023. He's been with Benin, and he has 19 caps and 3 goals, and is 23 years old. He's with Burnley in England, recently promoted to the Premier League. He was with them since 2024. However, you won't see him if you watch highlights, because he's on loan to St. Pauli in Germany, and he was also on loan to Standard Liège in Belgium. Prior to that, he played for Caen in France from 2019 to 2024. So a pretty good resume there. Like his brother, he was born in France, and he scored 2 of their 7 goals in qualifying here for this tournament, and 1 of their 12 goals in qualifying for the 2026 World Cup. So they rely on Huntonji for goals there. He started 9 of their 17 games over the period. He was subbed in for 4 and on the bench for 1. So just 3 matches that he wasn't selected for. And we are going to see him in other positions on the field. Just a left attacking midfielder for the last 4 games here, but he played on the right and even as a forward once. Andreas Huntonji. Or perhaps we won't see him at all because he has an injury doubt cast over him. He's had a thigh problem that's very recent, from early December, and he has an unknown return date. So that is unfortunate for them, because he is a definite candidate. We'll review that in section 3. Let's go over to the right attackers, and here we have more candidates. We have a definite candidate in Jodel Dosu, and then a likely candidate in Ayagan Tosin, and then 2 possible candidates, Olatunji Teslimi. He's a newcomer to the squad, and also Rudolfo Aloko, who we probably actually should put ahead of Tesalimi there. I'll just move him on the list, because Aloko does get some starts during the period, whereas Tesalimi doesn't. And finally, we have a player seemingly off the squad, Steve Traore. Sorry, he's not seemingly off the squad. He's possible, but unlikely. Okay, let's go back and look at the position of right attacker over the period. And we have 4 players appearing in the position over this period. So from June 2024, it was Jodel Dosu. He played also 2 of their 6 games in the fall of 2024. But Ayagun Tosin played 3 of those 6 games. Forward Andreas Huntonji came in for the last of those games and went on to play both games in March of 2025. And actually, he and Junior Olatin switched flanks in one of those March 2025 games. And then all 3 of those players, Hutunji, Dosu, and Tosin, appeared over the last 6 games. Only Dosu started twice, and newcomer Rudolfo Aloko also appeared twice. So this position seems quite undecided. When we look at the last 3 games, it was Aloko, Dosu, and then Tosin over the last 3 games. So it seems like they really haven't settled on a single player in this position. Let's look at the candidates. Jodel Dosu is a real veteran for the team since 2013. He has 73 caps and 10 goals and is 33 years old. Currently playing for a team in Luxembourg since 2025, but has mostly played in France and Austria, his 2 teams. He was born in Benin, and his first couple of clubs were in Benin. Jodel Dosu was a selection for the 2019 the 2019 African Cup. He subbed into 3 games there, as well as starting 2 of the games. And he's been scoring in their qualification runs ever since. Usually 1 or 2 goals in every qualification. And Dosu started only 6 games, 6 of their 17 games over this period, but he did sub in for 7 and was on the bench for the other 4. So we have him as a definite candidate because he's always called up. Next, we have Ayagan Tosin. He's actually coded as a forward. We moved him over here because all of his starts during this period were on the right side here. And Tosin has been with Benin since 2022. He has 20 caps and 4 goals and is 27 years old. And he plays for Lorient in France since 2023 and has also played in Switzerland and Latvia. Actually, for 4 years, he played for FC Zurich in Switzerland. He scored 2 of their 12 goals in World Cup qualifying there, and only started 4 of their 17 games over this period, but he was subbed in for 4 and on the bench for 2. Those were the first 2 games. There were 7 matches, though, that he wasn't called up for. So Ayagan Tosin, well, we have him as a likely candidate because he was more active towards the end of the period here. Also more active towards the end of the period was Rodolfo Aloko. He's been with Benin since 2022 with just 4 caps and no goals, but he is only 19 years old, and he's playing in the USA right now, or is at least on the roster of, not a well-known team in the USA. It's called Crown Legacy FC. To be honest, this was the first time I had heard of it, although it was on my list. But he's actually on loan to an equally obscure team in Croatia since 2025 there. And otherwise, he was with a club in Benin since from 2021 to 2025. So all of those clubs in USA and Croatia, that's all in 2025. He got his first cap for the senior team, at least, in June of 2025. He was playing in some African Nations Cup games there. But for the senior team, started 2 of their remaining 5 games and subbed in for 1. But then he was not selected for the last 2 matches. So we did see him getting his starts right at the end of the period there. Next, our second possible candidate, Olatunji Tesalimi, has no caps for the national team. He's 21 years old and plays for a team in Finland there. He moved from Benin in 2023 and has been with that team since. Tesalimi got his first appearance on the bench right at the end of the period here in October 2025. Didn't start either of the remaining 2 games, but he was on the bench for both of them. So could be coming into the squad. Again, we're seeing quite a few changes right at the end of the period here. Finally, we have Steve Traore, and he was subbed in for 2 games, but not included or not called up for the last 5 matches. So we'll leave it at that for Steve Traore and introduce him more if he's selected to the final squad. Meanwhile, we move on to central attackers, and where we moved Junior Olatan from here because over this period he's been playing on the left. So we have a likely candidate here in Razak Rachidou and a possible candidate in Romaric Amusu. So let's talk about the position of central attacking midfielder here. We saw in section 1 that they actually do use a 4-2-3-1 formation, which has this position in 53% of games. However, when we did central midfielders, we saw that in many cases it was Dodo Doku playing in the role there, so part of that central midfield triumvirate. And actually, that covers all of the cases when this formation and position were used. Central midfielder Dodo Doku playing in that role. So that means the candidates here, neither of them have any starts for the national team. Razak Rachidou is new to the team in 2025 with 4 caps and no goals. He's just 19 years old, and he is one of the few players still playing in Benin. Oh, check that. He's on the roster of a club in Benin, but he's actually on loan to Kustosiji. It's a team in Croatia. I'm sorry to the people of that town, but I simply can't pronounce your name. But I should say that it is the same team that we saw Rodolfo Aloco loaned to. So both of those players playing for, let me try it once more, Kustosija. I think I got it. Kustosija in Croatia, both of them on loan to that team. Okay, Rachidou got his first cap then in June of 2025, didn't start any games, any of the remaining 5 games, but was subbed in for 4 of them and on the bench for 1 other. And so we have him as a definite candidate. Maybe that's a bit too generous, but there we go. The possible candidate, Romaric Amusu, has been with the team since 2022. He has 5 caps, and another young player, just 25 years old, fairly young, and he plays for ASEC Mimosas, probably the biggest club there in Ivory Coast. Been with them since 2024, having moved from Benin to play with them. And Amusu got his first appearance on the bench in June of 2024, didn't start any of the games, but was subbed in for 3. And that includes the last 2 matches, and he was on the bench for 8 and not selected for 4 others. So to be honest, we could put him at the likely level also. I'd say both of those players kind of between likely and possible. So we may see them selected for the squad, but we probably won't see them on the field because it's really hard to get in. It's really hard to get into the amongst the starters here. Okay, let's move on upfield to the forwards. We begin actually because we have 1 player coded as a secondary striker, so we begin there. And there's no narrative for this position because they never use a formation that has a secondary striker. That would be a 4-4-1-1 formation. But anyway, we have a possible candidate in Candace Fiogbi, and his name is in orange, which means he has come in during this period. Actually, since 2025, he has 3 caps and is just 20 years old, and he is with Atalanta's under-23 team in Italy, and actually for a long time was with Atalanta's youth club in Italy there too. But he was born in Benin. He got his first appearance on the bench in March 25, Candace Fiogbi, and didn't start any games but was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 2. However, he was not selected for the last 2 matches. So Candace Fiogbi, a possible candidate. Let's go to the forwards, and here we have moved. We've moved a couple of players. We've moved Andreas Huntunji, and we've also moved Ayag and Tosin, both of those playing as attacking midfielders. So that leaves us with just 1 candidate. I'm not sure I've ever seen that before, but it is 1 candidate at the likely level, Steve Mooney. No, that's not likely. That's at the definite level, because he started all 17 of their games, Steve Mooney. I wonder if there's a reason I had him coded as likely. Anyway, definite candidate. Steve Mooney has been with Benin since... Oh, no, I got to Well, I'll do the summary, but it's fairly simple. Steve Mooney played the position in every game over this period. Only in game one did they use a two-man forward line. In that case, it was Andreas Huntonji um, uh, playing alongside of Mooney, which is not a surprise because Huntonji is coded as a forward. Okay, now we can do the bio on Steve Mooney. Since 2015, he has been with Benin with 67 caps and 22 goals. That's pretty good. And he's 31 years old. And currently on the roster of Augsburg in Germany since 2024, but actually on loan to Alanyaspor in Turkey since 2025. Fans of the English League might remember him playing with Huddersfield when they were in the Premier League. He was with them from 2017 to 20 and also played for Montpellier in France. That was his youth club, Steve Mooney. He was part of the African Cup in 2019. He started all games except for game 4. He was suspended for that because he got 3 yellow cards during the tournament. And Steve Mooney, scores a lot of their goals. So he got 3 of their 5 goals in World Cup 2022 qualifying, 2 of their 8 goals in 2023 African Cup qualifying, and then 2 of their 7 goals in this qualification as well as scoring in the recent World Cup campaign as well. So very important player for them. And as we said, started all 17 games over the period. So we'll expect to see Steve Mooney on the final roster and on the field as well. That brings us to the end, though, of Section 2 and our look at the candidates. So we move on into Section 3. And we welcome new listeners to Section 3 here, which we're releasing as a short version on Part 1 of Benin's players. So in the full version, we did introduce the candidates and their likelihood of making the final squad. And if you want that information, our reasons for putting them where we put them, and some career information on these players, that's what we did in the full version of the mediacast. And we're not concerning ourselves with predicting starters in this review. That's something we're going to do in part 2. But here we're just looking at the candidates and their likelihood of making the final squad. So let's begin with the manager. We have Gernot Rohr. He has been pretty successful with the team, getting them to this cup and a competitive World Cup campaign. So he is their manager, and we don't expect that to change. Let's go to goalkeepers. We have a definite candidate in Marcel Danjanu, and likely candidates in Saturnine Alagbi and Serge Obasa. And really, that's all the candidates we have. But in this review, we're not going to concern ourselves with possible but unlikely or seemingly off the squad players. However, there were none of those for goalkeepers. Let's move on to central defence. We have a definite candidate in Mohamed Tijani and 3 likely candidates, Cedric Huntonji, Johan Roche, and Olivia Verdon. All 3 of those players likely candidates. Over to left back, we have a definite candidate in David Kiki, and that is all we have over there. When he's away, it's out of position players who come in to cover the position. Some of those players might be some of the right backs here. We have no right backs at the definite level, but 2 at the likely level, Abdul Rashid Mumini and Tamimi Uoru. That's quite difficult to say. I mean, you've got to give that to me. Anyway, Tamimo Uroru, a likely candidate. He sometimes plays on the left as well. We have a possible candidate in Rodrigue Fassinu, and that's all we have over here at the top 3 levels. So that's defense. Let's move on to the midfield and defensive midfielders. We have 2 definite candidates in Hussein Imurain and Dodo Doku. and then a likely candidate in Mariano Ahuangbo, and then three possible candidates, Matteo Alinvi, Rodri Kossi, and Atajiku Samadu. All of those defensive midfielders, but only one coded as a central midfielder, and that is definite candidate Ceci Dalmeida. Okay, let's go on upfield, and we begin with the attacking, left attacking midfielders. And here we really have two out of position players, because they don't have any players coded as left wing or left attackers. So we have attacking midfielder Junior Oletan, and then Andreas Huntonji, the younger brother of the central defender we just met, Cedric Huntonji, and both of those are definite candidates. Andreas Huntonji does kind of play other positions as well, though, and is coded as a right. Is coded as a forward. Actually, only played one game as a forward, but played on the left and the right. For right attackers, we have a definite candidate in Jodel Dosu and a likely candidate in Ayagan Tosin. Then we have two possible candidates, Rodolfo Aloko and Olatunji Tessalimi. Central attacking midfielders, we have a likely candidate in Razak Rachidu and Romaric Amusu, although neither of them got any starts during this period. In fact, there's quite a few players who didn't get any starts here. For forwards, we have actually one player coded as a secondary striker, and that is a possible candidate Candace Fiogbi. And surprisingly, only one candidate at the forward level, and that is Steve Mooney, a definite candidate who started all of their games during this period. So that's it. That is our race through the team, reviewing section 2. And we move on here to the next order of business in section 3, big names who are off the squad. Well, Benin didn't play in the last two African Cups, the last two games they had. The last tournament they were involved in was the 2019 tournament. But we do have a couple of names from them because they did play up until 2023 in most cases here. So the first one is Khalid Adenon. And we won't go into too much detail, but he 85 caps and 2 goals last playing in 2023. And he was not only part of their 2019 squad, but their 2008 and 2010 squad as well. Next, we have Jordan Adioti. He played from 2012 to 2023 with 47 caps and 1 goal. He was a starter in the 2019 African Cup. Next, Mikel Pote played from 2008 to 2022 and got 69 caps and 10 goals. He was part of the 2010 squad and the 2019 African Cup squad there. And finally, we have Stéphane Sessegnon. He was captain of the team. He played all the way from 2004 to 2023 with 89 caps and 24 goals. And he was part of the 2008 and 2010 squads and was captain of the team for the 2019 African Cup there. So all 4 of those players, big names for Benin, just most of them retiring just a year or 2 before this cup. So that came a bit too late for them. Let's move on to a review of injuries. We only have one to contend with here, but it is to a definite candidate. It's to Andreas Huntonji. And excuse me a second. This is a very recent injury from early December here. He was out with a thigh problem last weekend from his team, St. Pauli there in Germany. And it's an unknown return date. So we'll have to put him in the unknown category for now, but hopefully we will learn more about that and can report on it in part 2. that is it for us. I'm going to skip closing thoughts and go straight to the preview of part 2. That'll come out when the preliminary and final rosters are published. We think that'll be in mid-December here. And at that time, we will go over our list here and tell you who made it and who didn't. We'll highlight any notable non-selections, any surprise inclusions, or any new players. And we will update on the injury situation, whom Tonji and anyone else who's injured between then and now. And then my favorite part of part 2, our prediction of the starters, the starting players on the field. So we hope you join us for that. And I hope this mediacast on Benin familiarizes you with the team and helps you enjoy them when you see them play. We would like to thank Pixabay and Cold Fingers for the wonderful music used in this mediacast. The title of the piece is Eid Mubarak.